So I'm going to ask Caleb to come up, and Caleb can tell you a little bit about what he does, and maybe a little bit about his background, where he and Kelsey live, and they got two little boys here. And you can come on up, Caleb. But Caleb was someone got to know through those that we worshiped with and were part of down in Sioux Rapids for a number of years. Carolyn and I were, and Caleb grew up down by Marathon on a farm, and maybe share just a little bit with you as he starts in to bring the message this morning. But he was our youth pastor down at the church in Sioux Rapids, and he continues that work, and it's just a privilege to know he and Kelsey. And this morning, as I lined up David last week and then Caleb for today, I really appreciate men of God who are willing to come and to speak and to bring a message. And so I want to welcome Caleb here this morning.
Well, good morning, everybody. When Kurt asked me to speak to you, he said, please try and keep it under 3 hours. I'll do my best. No, all kidding aside, we've known Kurt and Carolyn, we were trying to figure this out, I've known them longer, but Kelsey and I have known them probably for 6-7 years now. When we first moved back, I had been working at a church in Ames. That's where I met my wife. I was a youth sports director. I went to school at Iowa State, go Clones. But while I was working in Ames, I met my wife. She had just graduated from Moody Bible Institute and was going to be a missionary in Africa, and I always tell people I ruined her plans. So, but we got married. We moved back to Northwest Iowa. I grew up on a farm, like Kurt said. Was always my passion. I loved working outside. The thing I missed most was just working with my hands, being outside. And I said, I'm coming back, and we're just going to take a step back. We'd been helping with the youth ministry in Ames for like the last 5 or 6 years, and I said, we're just going to take a break. We lasted about, 3 months. And then we decided to start a youth ministry in Sioux Rapids called Ignite Ministry. There's a building across the street from the church we were at, and it's kind of blossomed from there. I always tell people 5 years ago when we started Ignite, we started with 5 kids. And ever since then, God has just found ways to bless us, and we've continued to grow. It's just been an amazing thing. Kurt and Carolyn were there when it got started. Pastor David, you guys heard from last week, has been there and is also still a part of our Ignite Council. So I've gotten to work with both of them, both great guys, as you guys know Kurt, and got to meet David last week. It's just been a blessing for me to learn from them and watch how they minister to people. But it's just been an awesome thing. So there's a lot of connections there. I see some familiar faces out here this morning, and I probably know more of your guys' kids here because we've done a lot of joint events with First Baptist in the past, which has been a lot of fun, just to get to know and kind of get some church unity and be able to work with other churches in the area. But as Kurt said, we started Ignite Ministry about 5 years ago. And it's just been a huge blessing on our lives. Kelsey and I kind of got started from there. The ball has rolled, and God has blessed it in amazing ways. I always tell the story of this young man. His name was Landon. He walked in, probably the second or third Sunday we had Ignite, and he walked in, and he kind of looked at me, and he said, "Who can be here?" And I said, "Any students, middle school or high school." He's like, "Okay, I have to go." And he walked out the door. I was like, well, that was the quickest youth group. He was here for about 2 minutes. But about 10 minutes later, he came back with about 5 or 6 kids. And from there, it just started to kind of get the ball rolling. And it's just been an awesome thing to see God work. And we have a lot of kids that are unchurched in our community. As you guys know, being from Spencer and close to Sioux Rapids, we're kind of a community. Sioux Central is a community of a lot of towns, right? And so it takes a lot of towns to make a great youth group, but it's been a blessing and an awesome thing. The verse I wanted to share with you guys today and what I'm kind of going to be talking about today is living sent. What does it mean to live sent? And the verse I wanted to share with you comes from Matthew, and it's kind of our foundation verse for what Ignite is. I'll pull it up here. I have my other verse pulled up, but before I had children, no one ever cried when I went up to talk. So, our foundation verse comes from Matthew 5:13 through 16. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that you may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Ignite was named for a purpose. Hi, buddy. Ignite was named for a purpose, and it was to be a light. We wanted to be a light in our community, just like every church should strive to be a light in its own community. So what does it look like to live sent? What does it look like to be that light in Spencer, in Sioux Rapids, Fostoria, wherever town you're in? What does it look like? I want to give you 3 examples this morning of men from the Bible who live that out. What does it mean to be live sent? My first example comes from Exodus. We're going to talk about Moses. And I want to read a short passage here from Exodus to you. This takes place after I'm sure you guys all know the story of Moses. Moses was born in Egypt, was raised in the palace, and then from there he got in an altercation, killed an Egyptian, and ran away, right? Because they were going to kill him, and he was hiding in a place called Midian, and this is where our story takes place. Now Moses was keeping with the flocks of his father Jethro, a priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flame of the fire in the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see the great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside, God called to him and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then God said to him, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel have come to me, and I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. I will send you to Pharaoh, and you will bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, But I will be with you, and you shall be the sign for you, or I will be the sign for you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, If I come to the people of Israel and say, The God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask, What is his name? What am I to say? God said to Moses, Say, I am who I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say this to the people of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name and forever. Thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me. I have observed and I have done your will in Egypt. And I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites. So the reason I wanted to read this story to you this morning is sometimes when we're asked to live sent, we stumble or we second guess. In this part of his life, Moses was a man of excuses, right? He was trying to find a reason not to go. He's like, they won't listen to me. Who am I to them? Moses is like, I'm not good at speaking. And the story goes on from where we just read, but he says, I'm not good with words. How are they going to know that you sent me? Right? And God said, do you really doubt me that much? He goes on to say, they will not believe what they hear. They will not believe unless they see. And we talk about the miracles that God performed in Egypt. He turned a staff into a snake. He put the hand in the cloak that became leprosy when he pulled it out. Why do we challenge an all-powerful God? This is something that comes up a lot in Ignite, and it's something that I think even for adults is hard to understand, right? I always use this concept, we try and put God in a box, right? We try to give him human qualities, but God is more than that, right? He is more than what we can quantify. Moses had doubts even when God was performing miracles. Even before God had a bush that was burning before him, he had doubts. But he was calling Moses to live sent. He was calling Moses to go out and bring his people home. What does that story tell us about us? I know in my life personally, there's a lot of times we try to make excuses for what God's trying to tell us to do, right? You know what? I just don't want to do that today. I'm just too tired. I don't want to call that person. I think we all can have that number of excuses that we can think of the people that we need to reach out to. I got a couple good examples from my own life. When I was in college, it was during about midterm exams at Iowa State, and I was sitting at a table in the dining hall, and there was nobody there. It was late. I usually had lunch late, about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and I'm sitting there studying for my exams. There's nobody. I mean, we're talking there's nobody there. A gentleman came in, sits down at my table. I kind of look around, all these empty chairs. I have headphones in. I'm doing everything in my power to try and avoid conversation. And he sits down at my table. And I kind of look at him, almost probably a little disgusted. I don't know exactly how my face looked, but I was like, "Can I help you?" And the man asked me, I was wearing a bracelet at the time that said "Live Sent." It was from a conference I had been to. And he asked me, "What does your bracelet mean?" And I had to sit there and think for a minute, and finally I looked and I said, "God, okay, I get it. You're throwing me a change up here. You want me to talk to this guy." And I'm not a very good baseball player, so it's got to be a pretty slow pitch. But that guy was named David, and he went on. I talked to him and got to know him, and he started coming to our men's Bible study. And from there, he actually became a co-leader with another guy and started another Bible study. And God used me in a little fraction of David's life to get the ball rolling. And it was all because he came and sat next to me. But I was making excuses. I had a test. I was not prepared enough. That was a bad excuse because I was never prepared enough for any of my tests. But I was trying to make excuses why I didn't want to help. And God was saying, "No, this is going to happen now." It worked out because I passed the test too. So God will and can use you. A lot of time it's on God's time and not our time. If you read about any of God's miracles, we shouldn't really be living with any doubts. Yet we still live with doubts every day. Moses had first-hand accounts of what God could do, but he also had, Moses had first-hand accounts of what God could do, miracles of people being healed from illness, people surviving fires. So these are, I'm getting all screwed up here. Miracles of people being healed from illness. We talk about the 10 plagues of Egypt. But even in our own lives, we can think of things, people surviving cancer, things being healed that shouldn't have happened, people waking up from comas. Miracles happen all the time. One of the craziest things I always think about is that we live on a planet here on Earth that's the perfect distance from a sun that we don't burn up or freeze, right? Only God could do something like that. Only God could put it in the perfect place where we need it. Moses was sent to do an impossible task in Egypt. He was sent to rescue all of Pharaoh's slaves to a promised land. God can do the impossible, so why do we put limits on him? My second person is the story of Paul. And I am specifically talking about Saul to Paul, right? We talk about transformations a lot in Ignite Ministry, these guys that their names change with significant parts of their life. But Saul was a bad dude. We call him the Jewish thug, right? He was a bad dude. He was kind of given the okay to hunt down Christians. And my point with the story of Paul is God can use anybody, no matter their past. God makes a point to use people in the Bible who aren't your typical choice. It'd be like God picking the Cyclones in basketball to win the NCAA championship. We all know that's not going to happen this year. But my old example used to be football, but they're actually pretty good now. So couple examples. King David was the youngest son of a shepherd, was picked to be the king of Israel. Jesus, the Messiah, was born a carpenter. Paul was a hunter of Christians, right? He went around tracking down Christian groups. And he ends up writing a majority of books in the New Testament. Paul spent the better half of his life hunting down Christ followers. In Acts chapter 8, Saul, before he became Paul, even was there and kind of okayed the execution of Stephen. Saul went from house to house, dragging men and women linked to Christianity out of their homes, and he took them to prison or had them beaten up. On the road to Damascus in chapter 9, Jesus blinds Saul and changed Saul's heart. And Saul was transformed when God sent Ananias. Talk about another guy that probably did not want to go do what God had called him to do, right? He did not want to go talk to this guy that was literally hunting down Christ followers. But Ananias answered God's call and went and talked to Saul, and God changed his heart. God isn't held to our boundaries. What can we learn about living sent? It doesn't matter our past. It doesn't matter where we come from. I always found it really interesting, especially when I lived in Ames, and even now as the kids I'm working with in Ignite are getting older, the backgrounds and the stories you hear from kids and how they've come about now, right? And just the change. And I've had parents walk up to me and say, "Hey, I just want to thank you for what you're doing, yada, 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 but I've just seen my kid change." I said, "You know what? It's not me, it's God. God changes their heart." And we saw that in Ames. Kelsey and I had a group of young men that we were leading a Bible study for, or I was leading a Bible study for. She was feeding them. That's just as much work as leading the Bible study because they eat a lot. I think at one point we were going through like 4 or 5 boxes of cereal a week. It was crazy. And we were poor, so all we fed them was cereal. But they were eating a lot of food, and at times they would drive us nuts and be frustrating, and then at other times we'd be like, God has blessed us with such a great group of guys. And there's a couple of those guys now that are in youth ministry or in some type of ministry, and it's just been awesome to see the way God has used them in their lives. God can use anybody to be lived sent. God many times, not always, but puts you in the life of someone that he possibly can use for change. I didn't know that God was going to put David in my life that day. Wasn't looking for it, wasn't ready for it, but God put David in my life. He put guys from a high school group in college into my life, and then for the next 5 to 6 years as they grew up, and they changed my heart, but they also had their hearts changed, and it was just an awesome growing experience. God's plan is not always our plan. We have to be ready to be lived sent. My final story is the story of Jesus. You want to talk about someone that God used, that was the most unpredictable call that nobody saw coming. Jesus came to us the son of a carpenter, born of virgin birth. He was the Messiah for Israel in the form of a man, living off the kindness of others. He had disciples instead of warriors. I always like to tell the story, when they thought Jesus was going to be this king, they thought he was going to ride in on a white stallion into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday and overthrow the tyranny, and yet he rode in on a burro, which is actually the first recorded hijacking, right? When they took the burro. It's okay, they gave it back. But he didn't fit the mold of what we do when we put people in the box. He didn't fit that mold of what the Messiah looked like to the people. and yet is exactly what we needed. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he talks to his disciples about what their purpose is and how they must not go astray. This is where that idea of being the salt of the earth and the light of the world comes. I'm sure you guys know this little light of mine, right, from Sunday school, and how everybody shouts. All the little kids get really into it. I was one of those kids at one point. But we're called to be a light. We're not supposed to hide it. We're not supposed to leave church Sunday, and then all of a sudden Monday, we have a different face on. I heard this phrase the other day that I thought was really good. How does your Sunday change your Monday? How does what you learn here on Sunday change how the rest of your week goes? How is God calling you to be live sent with the rest of your week? How does your Sunday change your Monday? We are the salt of the earth. With salt, we have taste. God made us all different. Like salt, we bring a different flavor, a different skill set. Not everybody's going to want to stand up here and preach. Not everybody has the talent to play the piano. Not everybody has the talent to run computers. I am terrible with computers. My wife will attest. I get really mad at inanimate objects. It's one of my downfalls. But some people are really blessed in that way. Some people really have a gift for that kind of stuff. Kelsey is an amazing cook. I have gained a lot of weight since we've been married, but it's because she's an amazing cook. She has a gift for it. Other people have gifts as well. We are called to be the salt of the earth. Not all gifts are the same. God gave us different gifts so we could impact the kingdom in different ways. God calls us all to be a light as well. A dim light brings nothing. God made us to light up the world. If we live our life in the shadows, then Christ died on the cross for nothing. We need to live with Christ's light on us, everything we do. We can't pick and choose when we have it. God isn't going to allow us to turn the light on for Sunday and then turn it off for Monday. I'm going to leave you here today with a quote from Paul Rhodes, who's the former coach of Iowa State Cyclones. He had a saying which was kind of called all in. Now, to be fair, when he gave this saying, they weren't very good. So, but it kind of relates to what we're talking about today about living sent. We need to be all in. Paul Rhodes said this: if you aren't giving your heart 100% to what is right in front of you, neither is anyone else around you. You need to live all in. I'll say that one more time. If you aren't giving your heart 100% to what is in front of you, neither is anyone else around you. I think, especially in youth group and in church and whatever format we're worshiping in, that needs to be our mentality. We need to leave church 100% living sent for God, 100% for what the kingdom, growing the kingdom and what that's about. How does your Sunday change your Monday? We all need to be 100% in for God. We need to live sent. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the opportunity for me to come here and just share a little bit about Ignite Ministries, but also to share about what it means to live sent and just to glorify God with what we do, Lord. I just pray that as we leave here today and as we think about what the sacrifice of your Son dying on the cross means to us and the significance of that, Lord, that as I think about that children's message that Jeremy gave, that our sins were wiped white as snow. What a blessing, Lord, that we get that opportunity, that opportunity to live sent and share that with others. Please, Lord, use this Sunday to change our Monday. I pray this in your name. Amen.